The manuscript arrived on a Tuesday in a box lined with tissue paper, as if it contained something sacred. It did. Margaret Voss' final novel, the one the world had been waiting for since 2008, when Shed published The Architecture of Wanting and then vanished into upstate New York like a myth retreating into the mountains. I knew this before I read a single word. My agent, Patricia, had FedExed me a contract so thick it could have doubled as a novel itself, all NDAs and contingencies, and a signing bonus that made my hands shake. She's dying, Patricia said over the phone. Pancreatic. She has maybe a year, 18 months if she's lucky. She wants this finished. Published after she's gone. Why me? It asked. I was 36, with 2 modestly reviewed literary novels and a growing reputation for being competent and invisible. The kind of writer other writers hire to fix their sentences when they're too proud or too damaged to do it themselves. Because you're good, Patricia said, and because she specifically requested someone no one's heard of. She doesn't want a famous name attached. She wants a ghost. I should have heard the warning in that. Margaret's house was smaller than I expected. A white colonial on 10 acres of overgrown gardens, the kind of place that suggests careful beauty once mattered here. She was waiting on the porch when I pulled up, smoking a cigarette with the deliberation of someone who no longer cared about the consequences. "You're early," she said. Not a greeting, an accusation. She was skeletal in the way that only illness or rage can make you. Sharp cheekbones, furious eyes, hair still mostly dark but shot through with white. She wore a linen shirt that hung off her frame, expensive linen, the kind that costs more than my rent. The drive was shorter than I expected, I offered. She stubbed out her cigarette on the porch railing, deliberately careless. "Come inside. I'll show you where y'all work. Y'all be in the guest house. Breakfast at 7. We work until 4. Don't arrive late. Don't ask personal questions. Don't touch anything in the main house except the kitchen." Understood? I understood that I was working for someone accustomed to controlling everything around her, even people. Understood, I said. That night, alone in the guest house with the manuscript, I read until 3 in the morning. It was extraordinary, devastating. The kind of book that makes you understand why people describe reading as a form of drowning. It was set across 2 timelines. One following a woman writer in her 30s at the beginning of her success, and another following the same woman at 60, reflecting on the wreckage of her choices. The love story at the center. A man, unnamed but vivid, who loved her with the kind of devotion that only appears in books because real people rarely survive it, was told entirely through her attempts to justify what Shed done to him. The manuscript ended mid-scene. The woman is in a restaurant watching the man across the table realize that she has chosen her ambition over him, their future, everything. The moment stretches. And then, nothing. The page ended. She was asking me to write the part where she was finally honest about the cost. "This is unfinished," I said the next morning, setting the manuscript on the desk between us. We were in her study, morning light cutting through tall windows onto walls lined with books. Everything in the room spoke of intelligence, discipline, exile. "Obviously," she said. "That's why I hired you. I mean, where do you want it to go? What's the arc? Does she apologize? Does she what?" Margaret's voice was sharp. "Redeem herself? Have an epiphany? Learn something valuable about love?" I said nothing. "Those are the kinds of endings writers like you always want to write," she continued. "Tidy, pathetic, Everyone learns, everyone grows, the universe has gentle lessons for us all. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. The manuscript goes nowhere because I don't know where it goes. That's your job. You're supposed to be good at this. I am good at continuing voice, I said carefully. Not inventing plot. Not deciding what your character wants. Then maybe you should figure out what she wants. Margaret stood. Here's the first 50 pages of my attempt to finish it. Rewrite them. Make them matter. Don't be lazy. She handed me a folder. The pages inside were covered in her handwriting, dense, aggressive, words crossed out with the violence of someone fighting herself. I spent 3 days on those 50 pages. I wrote about the woman's silence after the man leaves the restaurant. I wrote about how she doesn't cry, how she orders another drink, how the choice hardens inside her like a stone. I was proud of it. It was restrained, elegant, true. Margaret read it in silence the next morning. When she finished, she placed the pages on the desk and looked at me. "This is hollow," she said. "You've written the emotions she thinks she's supposed to have. Where's the real feeling? Where's the moment she actually understands what she's lost?" "Maybe she doesn't understand," I suggested. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe she's too damaged by ambition to, don't tell me what the point is." Her voice cut off my words. "You don't understand loss. You don't understand what it costs to choose yourself over someone who loved you. You write around it. You use pretty sentences to avoid the actual pain." She lit another cigarette. "Try again." That pattern continued for 3 weeks. I would write. She would demolish my work with a precision that felt surgical. Sentimental. Obvious. You're afraid of her anger. You're afraid of what anger looks like when it's about something real. Write like you've actually lived. Write like you're not terrified. One afternoon, frustrated, I pushed back. "Then why don't you finish it? If you understand what needs to happen, why are you tearing apart my work instead of writing it yourself?" She didn't respond immediately. She was standing at the window, and the late afternoon light made her look translucent, like something already half gone. "Because I can't," she said quietly. "Every time I try to write the ending, I stop. I can't make myself tell the truth." She turned to face me. "That's what I am paying you for, not to write the ending, to help me write it." Something shifted then. It wasn't kindness. Margaret was incapable of kindness. But it was honesty. It was her admitting that the brutality of her criticism wasn't about my failure. It was about her terror. "Tell me about him," I said. "The man, tell me who he really was." She returned to her desk and lit another cigarette. "No." "Then I can't help you. You don't need me to tell you," she said. "You need to find him." It took me 4 days to locate him. Michael Voss, they'd been married for 8 years, divorced in 2006. He was living in Vermont, running a bookshop, unmarried, quiet. His social media was minimal. Occasional photographs of the store's events, a newsletter about new releases. Nothing about Margaret. It was as if he'd excised her entirely, or shed done such thorough damage that only complete amputation had allowed him to survive. I drove up on a Saturday. The bookshop was small and carefully curated, the kind of place that survives on devoted customers rather than volume. He was shelving books when I arrived, a tall man with gray at his temples, moving with the kind of methodical grace that suggested he'd learned to make peace with solitude. "Michael Voss?" I asked. He turned, and I saw the moment recognition passed over his face, not of me, but of the kind of person I was. Someone connected to something he'd put away. "I don't grant interviews," he said. "I am not a journalist." I pulled out the manuscript pages and extended them. I am working with Margaret on her final novel. I think it's about you. He didn't take the pages immediately. His hands remained at his sides as if he was afraid of what touching them would do. She's finishing it, he asked quietly, trying to. He took the manuscript then, and I watched him read. It took an hour. The bookshop remained open. He stood in the back room and read while customers browsed, and I pretended to look at first editions I didn't need. When he finished, he set the pages down and said only, "She finally understood." He didn't ask how she was. He didn't ask how id found him. He simply understood, with the kind of wisdom that comes from having lived through genuine devastation, that Margaret had finally done what she should have done 15 years ago. Shed told the truth about what Shed done to him. I drove back to her house that night and found her in the study, waiting. She knew id gone. She was smoking, even though it clearly hurt her to breathe, even though the cigarettes were probably hastening her death. "Well," she asked, "he said you finally understood." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet, but she wasn't crying. It was something more austere than that, a reckoning. "Leave me," she said. "Go to the guest house. I need to finish this alone." I didn't see her for 3 days. She didn't come to breakfast. I left food outside the study door and it remained untouched. On the 4th day, she emerged, looking hollowed out completely, as if whatever Shed written had consumed her from the inside. "It's done," she said. "The manuscript is finished. You can send it to Patricia." "I want to read it," I said. "No, you don't get to read it. Not yet. It will be published as written. Y'all read it like everyone else." 2 weeks later, Margaret was hospitalized. 3 weeks after that, she died on a Tuesday. The same day the week before that Shed had me take dictation for the dedication page, the only thing Shed written in my presence in those final weeks. The book was published 6 months later under Margaret Voss' name alone. The literary world celebrated the return of a master. Critics dissected the dual timelines, praised the unflinching examination of ambition and love, mourned that Margaret hadn't lived to see the response. No one knew except me that the ending had been written in a fever of final honesty, that Shed burned away every protective layer of irony and distance and let herself actually confess. The dedication read, "For Thomas Brennan, who helped me see what id done, and in seeing it, let me become honest before it was too late." That was my real name, my full first name. The one I never used professionally, the one Margaret had learned from the contract and never spoken aloud until she wrote it in her own hand in her final act of integrity. I never told anyone what it meant. I didn't need to. The book told everything. Every reader could see, in the final chapter, the moment the woman in the story finally looks at the man across the table and doesn't flinch from the weight of her selfishness, doesn't retreat into narrative, doesn't protect herself with ambition or philosophy or anything else. She simply sees him, really sees him. For the first time in 15 years, she actually sees what she's done. It's not redemption. Margaret wasn't writing about redemption. It's something harder than that. It's the moment before death when you finally understand your own cruelty and have to sit with that understanding with no possibility of repairing it, only of acknowledging it absolutely. I never contacted Michael again, though I thought about him often. I wondered if he read it. I hoped he did. I hoped that seeing her finally tell the truth broke something open in him, some last scar tissue of anger that maybe he'd been carrying longer than he realized. As for me, I've written 3 more novels since then. They're better than my work before Margaret. Her brutality taught me what she meant to teach. That real writing isn't about safety or beauty or control. It's about being willing to write the thing that will destroy you, the thing you don't want to see about yourself, the moment where pretense becomes impossible. She gave me that. In all her fury and refusal and pushing, she was giving me a gift. The permission to write something that mattered, something true, something that cost. Sometimes I think about that final chapter she wrote alone, the pages I never read. I imagine her sitting in the dark, hands shaking, finally writing the words she'd been running from for 15 years. I imagine how it must have felt to stop running at last, to sit with the full weight of what she'd done, to tell the truth in the only medium that mattered to her. Language, sentences, the permanent architecture of words. Then I sit down to write. Not for glory, not for the advance or the reviews, but because Margaret Voss taught me that the only writing worth doing is the kind that requires you to become honest before it's too late. She died having learned that lesson. I am determined to live by it.